Okay, it's recording.
Yeah.
Um, well, I was very surprised you shared that experience. And
Yeah, because like I said, you're asking me about this, and I know when you were editing, you were shocked and you thought maybe it might be a good idea to leave it out. But I needed to put that in there because, like I said just before, um, sometimes we need to, there needs to be a real break away from the way we are treated to try to be the forced way we are treated to be something that we're not.
is a
And
dog chewing on a bone, Mark?
huh?
Is
But
the dog chewing on a bone?
oh no, I got three rescue birds here in the cage,
Uh,
three rainbow lorikeets, and one escapee, someone's pet. She's a parrot from the Amazon, and she ran away from someone. She ended up with me, and I got a big cage for them. And I got two rainbow lorikeets, two
uh,
babies, and they're feeding. So they'll be feeding on, and they're talking. So they'll be talking all the time.
okay, that's what I was hearing in the background.
Yeah. The one that actually talks, the SKP, someone's pet. She's playing with her bowl. She's got a little bowl, little aluminium bowl that they got.
Oh, do you think you should move the cage out?
For today, no, it's not going to happen. It's too big, and yeah, no, I haven't got anywhere to put it. It's too hot outside for me.
So it's big one?
Yeah, it's a big cage, and they're usually quiet. Now they're feeding, so they'll be quiet. As soon as there are the birds outside somewhere feeding, they'll go crazy because they see the birds and see the birds are free, see? But they're not free, they're in the cage, and they want to fly, and the two of them can't fly it because they're babies, and they still got fluff on them, they haven't even got proper feathers, and the other
How,
one,
how big are they?
they're only about this big, green little gummies. You know, so that's what you will hear. But anyway, what I was saying before is, when it happened to me when I tried to commit suicide, is after that things just fell into place really, really quickly. Because even while I was in hospital on the long stay, I had the space to just to be myself, to start reading again the things that I have forgotten in the rush of trying to be something that I wasn't. And so the books, the books started to come through as well. There are all these little, the strange things that I started to read again. The UFO thingies, the conspiracy theories, and all sorts of, ghost stories and so on. And that gave me the opportunity then to move to Melbourne, because I moved to Melbourne pretty much not even 6 months later. I left my job, I left everything, and as soon as I moved to Melbourne, and I found a place to my own place, because I stayed with a married couple for a while, a friend of mine, who was
Right.
also from Adelaide, and they moved over there. As soon as I found my own place, and I was free of all the pressure and things, that's when my creativity returned. It was almost immediately after that that I painted the first three really important paintings. The things that come through you, the spontaneous creativity that comes through you, because all these three paintings point towards the center, the recovery of the center, and the journey to the mythological journey to the underworld, where you recover the soul. So that was already there. I knew nothing about any of this. It just, when you're intuitive and creative, it just comes through you. You know. Have you ever listened to Anne Baring's talks?
Yes, several of them.
Uses, especially during alchemy and so on, when she talks about alchemy, she
I've
uses
listened to that one twice.
her husband's paintings. See, her husband is an intuitive creative, an artist, and he paints these things like she does, like she says. he paints these things completely on his own. There's no, although she knows about all this stuff because she studied the mythology, the psychology, the psyche, the soul all her life, but she says she doesn't talk to him about it. He's an introvert. He doesn't talk about anything he does. He just
Is that
creates.
you?
Yeah, I never talked about anything because I didn't know what to say. People asked me about, when I painted the first 3 paintings, I was taking some art classes, and the teacher asked me about them, and I couldn't describe any. I liked them. They moved me for some reason. And it was her who suggested the names for the paintings. She just said, "Oh, a female figure in a dramatic setting," and I had to come up with titles. And that was it. Because no one understands any of this stuff anymore, you see. And I remember my first exhibition, I was already in Sweden, in that little town, and I write about this in the book, the first exhibition I ever had. And I brought the paintings with me, and I made many others, sitting in the attic, in the hostel. That's mythological as well, because the attic, the top of the highest point of the house is your head. That's symbol of being inwardly centered. That's the attic. And that's where I created my paintings for the exhibition.
And you don't do it anymore?
I don't paint anymore. Once you know what the paintings are about, you don't need to anymore.
Don't you just do it for fun?
No, now I write. Because putting it into words with connections and with examples is consciousness, really consciousness. Enlightenment is when you are suddenly realize, oh my, this is what it is. But consciousness is when you can connect your enlightenment, the insight that you had, for instance, in a dream or intuition. You can connect that to mythology, to other ideas, and then you can show examples. Then you know. Okay? If you like I did show in the book, so many examples of my things, or later of what I thought it was, for instance, my dream or my painting, and then I actually I showed connections to mythology, to that psychology, to the story.
Why did you pick the pyramids to be on the front of your book? Hold it up and you look at it again.
Because I would have liked to have actually the first painting where she walks through the bridge into the temple, but I've already used that for the first book. So this was the next choice that I had, or this painting. But I like this. It's just more pleasing to the eye. And people are more familiar with the pyramids because people don't understand the first painting, the bridge.
Yeah, I think the pyramids also are a symbol of mystery. I've studied a lot about them over the last 50 years.
The pyramids are the symbol of the mountain, of the place where we go to mediate between the 2 dimensions. That's why in Egypt there are no mountains. So in mythology and in alchemy, the alchemist goes inside the mountain for the transformation. And when the transformation happens, the transformation happens at the apex of the mountain. That's why the pharaohs were buried inside the pyramids, is exactly the same thing. For the transformation to happen, you're going inward. The mountain is symbolic of going inward. And once you reach the apex, that's where the union or the reunion with the soul takes place. Because, for instance, in the ancient Sumer civilization, the pyramid was at the apex of the pyramid where you had the temple, where the priestess and the king had the annual reunion, the male and the female, the inward and the outward realities, the soul and the ego came together at the apex of the mountain. At the midpoint between heaven and earth. Heaven being your inward mind, and earth being your ego, let's say, your outward looking self. See? So that's why the pyramid. And another thing that points to the same thing is there are three pyramids. And three, do you remember what three is? 1, 2, 3. The middle way, the Buddha's middle way between the opposites. That's how you get in.
I've been in that sarcophagus for initiations 3 times in this lifetime.
Yeah, but in your dream or in reality?
No, I've been to Egypt 4 times, that 3 times with a metaphysical group.
Inward event. It's not an event where you take it concretely, or it's a metaphor for what happens within you. Yeah. Without that inward initiation, without that psychological experience or mystical experience, the outward doesn't really work. Because
I had a mystical experience there, all 3 times.
Yeah, because you can because of the environment, the feeling and everything else. It can happen, but what I'm trying to communicate here is that it's a mystical event. It's a psychological event. I've never been to the pyramids, and when I was 21, I painted them. I painted the pyramid, like the mountain or the vortex. It's the middle. It's the center. The very center where everything happens. That's where you have to go. To the most inward center, that's where the tree grows. That's where the stream flows. That's where you reunite with this mystery, with God, with your divine path. So that's what the pyramids mean as well. That's why she's standing. See, she's standing up above on a terrace, and the terrace is checking. It's an interplay of the opposites. Looking at the pyramids, the 3, and she's wearing a blue cap. Do you remember what blue means? Intuition. And that's why she is also that divine feminine, your intuition, the feminine instinct. And that's why the painting on the cover. So there you have it. It's important to understand that if we're going to be have this experience, then it's going around and traveling to geographical locations is fine, but it has to be an inward event. It has to be a spontaneous inward event. And I see that there's quite a lot of people out there still traveling and hoping that they're going to find what they're looking for, things that are already within you, already in your heart, in your soul, in your psychology, really.
Well, I think, at least for me, while I was there, it helped activate it, at the different temples, the Temple of Isis, or, Horus the Hawk, and, or the pyramids. But, we did all the chakras down the whole Nile and visiting these temples. And
it can work because it's archetypal. That is to say, it's collective unconscious. It's a dimension that is alive within you, and it works because it triggers that dimension. But the event, the actual event, and what you will to be finding the center, it's an inward event. But yes, traveling to these locations and seeing seeing the images will trigger off your connection to that deeper level of yourself, the collective unconscious, the universal dimension, the dimension where we all dream the same dream. That's what I'm trying to communicate in all my work. And
well, did you paint the picture that's on the front of the book? Did you paint that one?
Yeah, I painted it in Melbourne. That's what I'm saying. When I moved to Melbourne I moved there in 1989, and I painted these 3 pictures: the bridge, the pyramids, and the other one where she's arriving in a blue car. I painted them in 1990. They were spontaneously painted. That's what I'm saying. When you have removed yourself from the environment that insists on just putting on you the CV values and the shallow materialism and so on. You remove yourself from that environment, which can be quite toxic. Then the opportunity for that deeper, the collective unconscious comes, and it comes spontaneously.
Sorry, I turned off my phone and a friend was texting me. She's never been on these classes before, and I didn't send her an email about this, but let me just type her. She can go to my website if she wants to join. But,
She wants to join us?
well, she didn't know anything about it because I didn't send it to her. You know,
okay.
she's a little woo-woo, but not.
It might be too much for her.
Well, she's traveled to the Himalayas, and
That's again a projection of your own inward mountain, the most inward center. That's why people travel the Himalayas, and that's why they travel to all these places. They're looking for something for
go
the
to my
collective.
website and check out the link if you want to join us. It starts at 7.
So that's like a text. Talk to your phone.
I can't.
Does it talk back?
No, I've got it on mute, so they can't call back.
Okay.
Are you using the phone?
It's funny if you said something to your phone and then your phone just said back, said something back. All right, then I just shut up for a while. No, I haven't been using your phone. It's a wonderful phone. I gotta go and get the little the SIM card that I've got in my old phone is too big for it. See, you need a little special mini SIM card that fits in there, and I gotta go and find my mobile provider, my people that I use, Vodafone, and they will change mine into that little one that I can use it. But I can use it at home, connected to wirelessly to the internet and so on. It's a wonderful thing. It's big.
I love it.
It's, for men, I'm thinking, where would you put it? You can't put it in a pocket. Where would you put it? You need a man bag. I mean, I can understand women have a bag that's easy, but where would a man put it? You can't put it in this pocket. It's too big. You can't put it in this pocket. You need a little, I don't know, attaché or something.
Well, you're at home all the time, so, or,
it's not a problem, but yeah.
So,
Men always keep their phones in their hands, I can always say they're all got their phone in their hands because it's too big for the pocket.
Well, you get used to them pretty quick, and I like it. I mean, I've got my iPad and the screen's about that big on it, so I don't use my phone for everything like a lot of people do. I use it for messaging, but that is so weird that Catherine didn't get the email, that I sent out a couple of days ago because you got it. And on my contacts, I have a special list for your group. And so I inserted all those names.
Didn't also Julie look for it?
She did look for it, and she said she couldn't find it.
Yeah, maybe it didn't go through.
I don't know. Well,
anyway, now they have it. Because I've just put up, I tagged Catherine and Julie to the address. So if they can't find it, it's there. I don't know who else wants to.
Well, I went on and sent everybody another announcement.
Catherine is coming.
There she is.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
Good, yourself?
Doing pretty good, Mayor. It's been a while.
So you managed to eat the dinner in a hurry?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, we've just been chatting here with Pamela. What happened? Why didn't everyone get the invite? But I don't know. I got it, and I got it a few times actually. That's why I put it up on my page yesterday for anyone who's still hasn't got it or is looking for it. And I just tagged you and I think Julie as well. So
Yeah, I got you. I got it. I got the message where you posted it, and there's a picture of your book. And then I got her email about an hour ago.
Yeah.
She resent to everybody. I didn't get it before.
Yeah, there's still time. I think like 10 minutes or so. I don't know how many people are going to be in today in the meeting. Probably just going to be us.
Well, Julie will be on.
Yeah, yeah. Anybody else? Do you think anyone else will come, Pamela?
Yes, I had read, I think the other Pamela said she was going to be on, and Yurk said he was going to be on, the people that replied right away.
Oh, good.
And I sent it to another man, Roy, who's on my Wednesday calls on Zoom with the healing. And so I sent it to him. He's pretty aware.
That'll be fun. Somebody new.
Yeah, he's from Wisconsin. So we've had nice talks about Atlantis.
Well, that's fun.
And alternative realities. I'm gonna ask you that question later too.
Alternative realities. You see, like I was just talking to you before about traveling to Egypt, the pyramids, or traveling to the Himalayas to go into the mountains. The same thing is the conspiracy theories with Atlantis, because Atlantis is that land that's missing, which was uniting the two halves, the European and the American coastline. So it's a metaphor again for the center where we find the soul, the missing civilization of our, with the highest of ourselves. That's all it is. The metaphor and the psychological. You don't go there diving into the Atlantic looking for the Atlantis.
But you have memories.
Yes, but they could also be just memories of the collective unconscious.
Well,
archetypal, and I'm not going to be arguing because there are people that are so convinced that you cannot put in a word that there wasn't Atlantis and so on and so on. But if you're looking for the Atlantis, just look within yourself. And that very, very center, like in the dream I had where I traveled to an island with a boat. Remember, the boat was pulled by this strange looking half male, half female, and she walked in the middle of that path, which was just below the water, the shining path, brought me to the island. That's the island. That's the very center of our being, the ground of being. So that's the Atlantis. Joseph Campbell even says, when we recover our soul and reintegrate it into our everyday life, that's the recovery of the lost Atlantis.
Oh, so he said it was part of the soul then?
Atlantis?
Yes.
No, Atlantis is a metaphor for the very center of our being. That's all it is.
But I thought you said Joseph Campbell kind of said it was like a metaphor for the soul.
It is. Yeah, he said that. He said that the recovered soul, a reintegrated soul into our life, is the recovery of the lost land of Atlantis.
Right.
It's a metaphor. Like mythology is a metaphor. See?
Exactly.
Go looking for the underworld out there.
7 o'clock East Coast time, where 3 of us are on one.
That's why I wrote this book and the other book. That I have people that are still running around looking for this or the other, and or going to Benares or going to Jerusalem, and so on. Someone's coming. Julie.
Hey, Julie.
Hello.
Hey, Julie.
You might have a microphone
Find my
Julie, that overhead light is pretty bright, and we can just see the reflection from your glasses on the computer.
off. She might just need to turn on the microphone. It's probably turned off.
She's not muted.
She's not?
Julie?
Okay, there we go. I'm here.
Hello.
Okay.
Hey, Mary.
Hello. Yeah,
I,
there's 4 of us. I don't know if there's gonna be. Oh, there's somebody else too.
That's my friend Pat that I just sent a text to.
Okay. Welcome aboard the Zumbo. Yeah.
Julie, there's a lot of glare coming off your glasses.
I know. I can't see you guys. So might as well just shut the video down.
You can't see us?
Barely.
Without the glasses.
Yeah, I can kind of see you.
Yeah, so look, I've got to wear glasses now too. That's why I've got them on. For
I can see Merrick, but I guess I don't need to see everybody else very well. I can recognize Catherine and Pamela.
Do you think the overhead light is creating a reflection on your computer?
It doesn't. Now we can see Julie whatsoever.
she's in the dark.
Metaphorical.
Metaphor. Now we can see you.
Is that better?
Yes.
Yes.
I
Well,
think it's my screen reflecting.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
fine. It's fine. Wear your glasses and turn your light on if you like.
I'm going to shine the light.
Okay, someone just left us.
That was Pat. Roy might be joining us because he had texted me a few minutes ago. And so I told him about it. He said he didn't catch the time on it. So I told him we were on.
I have a funny feeling that it'd be probably just the 4 of us, maybe one more person, just a normal intimate group that we always have. And that's fine. Like I was just saying before to Pamela, all these metaphors, that's one of the reasons I wrote especially this book, is that the metaphors for the soul are like traveling to Egypt, the pyramids, or looking for the Atlantis, or going to the Himalayas, climbing the tallest peak, and so on. These are all archetypal ideas and metaphors that are living within you. And if, okay, you can travel, for instance, somewhere to a special place, and you're going to get this, the imagery of the place, the feeling of the place, and the mystery that it has will trigger off something within you, will trigger off the deeper dimension of your collective unconscious, where the archetypes get reactivated. And you might have a mystic experience, but the event is always inward event. It's not that you run around and concretize the event, or you project it outside of yourself. Because then you might as well just be in some kind of church, religious church, because that's what they do. They have killed the metaphor, the religions have killed the metaphor, and now they concretely believe that this is what is true. Not ever looking inward, that it's psychological, but that it's a real event. You know, that Jesus fed the multitude with bread and wine and fish suddenly miraculously appeared. And all these are metaphors for your psychological events. Or that Jesus suddenly walked up to someone, put his hands on them, and they could see. And so on. If you understand what the metaphor of Jesus is, the ability to see, to open, Jesus means your eye of the heart, the seeing with your feminine instinct or intuition. So if you you know, you can see that this, when you come close to this metaphor, to this, when it opens within you, then you see. Oh, there's somebody else.
Hey, Roy.
Hello.
Glad you
Hello.
could join us, everybody. This is Roy. You know Julie, Catherine, and Peter is the one who wrote the book. So,
Hello, welcome.
Hi.
So, you know, when we're talking about these metaphors and so on, getting stuck with them is when we start to actually concretize everything. And what happens then, the living metaphor within you dies because you're looking for it outside somewhere, in concretized, in dead ideas and sort of quotes and so on. But the living archetype, the living metaphor gets forgotten. And that's when you start to have religion and so on. So that's important to understand. Like I was just telling Pamela before, she was asking me about my what I write in the book when I tried to take my life when I was 19 years old, and then I quickly moved to Melbourne. Events happened really quickly, because what happened was, in that environment, which is quite, you know, the environment which insists for you to be something else, it sort of kills the living metaphor within you, because you've got to fit in. You have to have a career, you have to find a job, make money, and so on. When you are free of that, that's what happened in Melbourne. Immediately, the metaphor, the deeper, the collective unconscious, the archetypes came through, and that's where I painted the probably most important 3 paintings of my life. One of them being this, the cover of the book, and the other was the first cover of the book, the bridge. Now, I knew nothing about metaphors, I knew nothing about mythology or archetypes back then. That was way too early. You know, that was like, I was 20 years old, then that would have been 15 years and 20 years too early. I haven't even heard the name Jung yet. You know, the collective unconscious and the archetypes. But that comes through you. It's within you, you know, where you experience these things. So that's so important. That's why I wrote the book. So that, you know, you don't need to go to the Himalayas, or you don't need to go anywhere else. You just got to look inward, and then you got to get creatively involved with things, whether poetry or art or painting or sculpting, anything. And when you empty your head and you start to be in that moment, you don't think about the past and you don't worry about the future. But something starts to speak through you, and that's the the recovering soul, the Atlantis of the recovered soul. See? Why Atlantis is a metaphor? Because it's the missing land beneath the sea, beneath the unconscious. And that's where it is. It's in the depths of your unconscious. And it's that land that used to bridge the 2 continents, the Americas and Europe. So it's that missing piece between the 2 opposites. The third, the middle third. So there's your middle third, there's one opposite, there's the other. It's 2 physical eyes, like I write in the book. So if you can start to see everything as a metaphor, then things start to open up to you. The whole mystery of life. You know, even getting married, you know, finding the right opposite. And then out of this union comes the child. And the divine child is again a metaphor of the insights that you get from your intuition, from your dreams, from your visions. It's a metaphor for the wisdom, the fruit of the union of the 2, the visible and the invisible, the ego and the soul. So, you know, I've talked about this to you every time pretty much we talk about it. It's this understanding that it's not, it's a metaphor. Everything is a metaphor of the language of the soul, of the language of the psyche.
I know Julie and Catherine have purchased the book. How far along are both of you in the book?
It's a heavy book, so you don't, you know, you're not going to read it like in a couple of days. It's a big book.
Maybe half. I don't remember the page number.
It's okay, it's fine. You don't need to remember anything. You take it as it comes. And, you know,
Julie, we didn't hear you. You were muted.
Yeah, I muted myself just in case Tank barked. I'm in the section on processing of the cave dream, about 178.
Yeah, that's, you know, that's a big section, and that's a difficult section.
Yeah, and I'm doing it the way you would say to do it, Marek. I'm writing, I'm drawing, I'm doodling what comes, and it's really wonderful. I've appreciated it because I've found things of myself in here, and it makes me feel like I'm not crazy, like you said. So I appreciate that.
Exactly right. I think a few of them will probably find that, you know, hearing this voice inside of you, you see, that's the Atlantis speaking to you. The soul living in the missing Atlantis. Oh, somebody else is here, Lori.
I just wanted to say some of those noises you hear. Mark has some birds, and apparently the cage is too big to move out of the room, because when there were just the two of us on, I kept hearing these little scratching noises. And
What kind of birds?
The rescue. I got two Australian rainbow lorikeet babies that still haven't all their feathers on, and they're rescued of the recent weather, the crazy recent weather that we had. They fall out from the nest.
Wow.
Yeah. And I've got one which has been brought by a friend to me. She is a escapee, so she's run away from somebody, and she's a pet, but she comes from the Amazon. She's about the same size as the rainbow lorikeet, about this big with a tail. She's also green, but she has a gray head and a gray beak, and they behave quite differently, so she makes different noises. They're very quiet right now, but there will be a moment when they start chirping and fighting amongst each other. So that's
What
not
fun.
me or anything, gotta be the bird.
You'll have to show us, Marek.
What fun.
It's difficult with this little camera that I have. It doesn't automatically adjust the contrast and so on. It'll be very blurry, but I will show you one day.
Maybe you'll have to take a picture and post it.
Probably, yeah. Now, right now, the two babies, the two rainbow lorikeets, are eating an apple, and the other troublemaker, the escapee, someone ran away. She's hiding behind the mirror somewhere, grooming her feathers.
he said they talk too. They can talk.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there you go. That's one of the reasons why I wrote the book is, there's the books, by the way, for anyone who hasn't seen it. One of the reasons I wrote it is, first of all, for people who have contact to the inner voice and have activated the intuition and live now from it, that you're not crazy. You know, there are others just as mad as you are. You know, if you hear the voices and you get instructions in your dreams and you get, and you get visions, and, you know, for instance, when you're creative and suddenly this unknown images start to pop up, you know, like the images, like I painted the images of the pyramids or the bridge or the feminine, that you're not crazy, that what you have done is managed to get out of your own way long enough for the deeper dimension of your psyche, the collective unconscious, to come through, the universal dimension, what I call the way we dream, the single dream, you know, that's the title of the book. That's what that means. And that is the language of the soul, really. So when, I will tell you a few stories later of what happened to me while I was there, especially on that journey, that crazy journey I had to make all the way up north to the Arctic Circle. And when I wasn't listening to them, to my own inner voices, and how crazy this started to get for me, you know, how it was insisting that I have to listen to it. You know, if you let someone else take over your decisions, then it will intervene, but you have to be sensitive enough to recognize when it's intervening so that you can correct your actions. So I'll tell you the story now, not that I'm talking about it. And if you haven't read the book or you don't know where it is, it'll be there somewhere on the page, something 112 or something, and it's under the title of Going North. And Going North, I've called the Northern Odyssey, and I was at that time living in Perth, and I was about 25 years old, 24, 25 years old, when I had a dream where I traveled all the way out there into the stratosphere, somewhere out there where the satellites, the level of satellites, and in the middle of the night, obviously like an out-of-body experience. And there I was, and there was a map, big map spread out in front of me with a finger, with a silver finger, the silver of the moon, suddenly pointing to Scandinavia, and it says, well, that's where you have to go. So sooner or later, I mean, within, I had the dream perhaps there would have been winter, so it would have been about August, and by January next year, before Christmas, I left my work, I left everything, just dropped it. And in January, I left to travel to Sweden. And to cut the story short, again, I'm in Sweden, and it's sort of things are not moving. I'm wondering where should I be going next. And again, I have a dream saying that I got to go. I'm in the dream, I'm traveling in an airplane. I'm sitting at the cockpit where the pilot is sitting, and I'm asking him, where are we going? So he points, he takes out a map, and he points to a little town there, which is called Narvik. Now, I never heard the name, I never heard of it before. So waking up from the dream, I remember the dream as it was, and the first thing I did when I arrived in Scandinavia, I bought a huge map of the whole continent. And there I was, I spread the map on my bed, and I started looking for the town, and I couldn't find it. It took me some 45 minutes, maybe an hour to find it. But up there, up north, in the Arctic Circle, there was a town called Narvik.
Really?
Yeah, there it was. So I bought a ticket on a train, an overnight train. It was a long, long journey, because Scandinavia is a big, long continent. And you're going all the way up north there. And I bought a ticket and I went up there. And I finally arrived and made a booking at a hostel. And where I was staying at a hostel, the hostel owner told me that there is another traveler similar to me, he said, staying at the hostel. But he says, he comes and goes. He calls himself a poet, and he comes and goes. And I never met him. I've never seen him or never met him. And one day, I'm sitting at a kitchen, I remember, at the hostel kitchen preparing my meal, when this guy walks in, extends his hand, and he calls himself, he says, hi, I'm Frank. Now, this guy was, he was a poet, obviously. He would have been probably in his 30s, maybe early 40s. He wore this being winter, he wore a sort of a sheep, like a sheepskin jacket, winter sheepskin jacket, one of those bomber jackets, leather pants, cowboy boots, and he had shoulder-length long hair. He looked like Jimmy Morrison, you know. I was taken by him completely because he looked so out of place. And it turned out he was a poet, and he wrote his own poetry, and he was also a musician, he had his own band, and he ended up all the way up there in Narvik because he met a girl, the Norwegian girl, at a concert, at a festival, music festival somewhere in Holland or in Denmark, and he followed her all the way to Norway. Anyway, we became quite good friends because he kind of knew things I couldn't put my finger on. He was like an intuitive, but he had this habit of carrying a packet of tarot cards in his pocket. He would take the tarot card he will shuffle them, you kind of spread them on the table, say something under his nose, you know, sort of, you know, shake his head or whatnot, and then put him back inside his thing, in his pocket. And he looked, and he saw that I was kind of, you know, perplexed, my eyes like dinner plates. I've never seen a tarot deck before. He says, do you know the tarot? I said, no. So he started to explain it to me. This means that, and this means that. He was like an oracle. That's what fascinated me about him. He was like an oracle. He knew answers. He said, oh, this is why, this is so and so, and this is so and so. And then, you know, instead of trusting my own inner voice, what I started to do, I started to get so fascinated with this guy that I not used him, but I asked him questions, and he knew the answers as it were. And I thought, well, this is what I got to do because this is Frank said so. And this is what I got to do because Frank said so I should do it. One day, I'm walking through town, and I keep hearing this tune. And I just keep, wherever I go, whether I'm in the shopping center, or I'm buying something to eat, or I'm back in the hostel, someone's playing this tune. You know, don't chase waterfalls. Stick to the lakes and the rivers that you used to. Everywhere. You know that TLC song from the 90s? Don't chase waterfalls. Stick to the rivers and the lakes that you used to. And it's already communicating to me. You know, my own universe, the song is already communicating to me. It got to the point where somehow the hostel owner saw that we were getting along. He actually put me into his room as well, you know, into the hostel room, so that we were constantly chatting. And I was glad to have a friend, this weird friend that knew everything. So we went for coffee and so on, so on. One night, this is just, you know, when you're at that spot where you're dreaming, but you're already awakened. This was early in the morning. I had this dream. I see him leaning over me, and then he grabs my throat and starts to choke me so hard that I thought he's going to kill me. And that emotion of being killed by this, you know, oracle man or the poet woke me up. He woke me up, and finally I got the message that you've got to listen to your own inner voice. Don't rely on anyone else. You have to trust your heart. The same day, I didn't say anything to him. The same day he moved out. He says, I gotta go. I gotta go be by myself. I gotta go to the mountains. See, there's your mountain, Pamela. I gotta go up there and sit and meditate on my own. But before he left, he also carried a little tape recorder with him, where he would, things that occurred to him or intuitively, he got an insight. That's where he wrote his poetry and his songs and so on. He always carried that with him. So he took that little tape recorder out, took the tape out of it, handed the little tape recorder to me. He says, look, I don't know what you have to do with it, but it's important that I give this to you. Can you see? It was important that you trust your own things that come through me at that time. This was years and years before I started to write poetry or anything like that. Although this was after the time I've already painted my hand in Melbourne, which I write about in this book as well. So what I'm trying to get at here is, you know, if you think you're crazy because you have this inner voice and something else is deeper talking through you, especially when the archetypes start to get activated and start talking through you, don't think that you're crazy. You have to listen to that, and then you got to get creatively involved. Like me with the tape recorder. If you start listening to other people, what they are saying too much, it's all right to get the guidance and know, then you have to go in your own way. But if you start to get caught up in worshiping people, like many people worship gurus or religions or even politicians, or your mom or dad who always know everything. You don't know anything now. You have to listen to me because I've lived, I know it's like this. And you ignore your own advice, that's when you're choking yourself. You see? That's when you're starting to cut off your own inner voice, as it were. And that's when you die. And death doesn't mean exactly that in the dream when you die, or in the dream when the soul dies. That's the meaning of the death. You have stopped listening to your own self. Now you're dead. You're not living anymore. You're not spontaneous. You're not alive. So if you have an image of the dead, or something that you have been killed in a dream, don't panic. Simply means you have stopped listening to your own intuition, your own voice, your own dreams. Because rebirth has the same meaning. You are being reborn. You are being alive again. And the living means to be spontaneous, to be creative, to be intuitively living from your own inner voice. So that's just one story from here. It was quite dramatic for me because, I mean, you can imagine, I was idolizing this guy, this James Morrison, oracle, walking oracle. And then suddenly my dream said, my inner voice says, well,
How old
stop
were
it.
you then, Mark?
Sorry?
How old were you then?
25, I think. Yeah, 25. And then suddenly my heart, my dreams, my soul, the lost Atlantis, the lost Atlantis, the miracle, the mystery of the lost Atlantis. And he says, you're killing yourself. What are you doing? Stop chasing waterfalls. Stick to the rivers and lakes that you used to. Trust your intuition. Trust the living water of your own inner voice. Another reason I wrote this book is that there are two levels. Like I've said so many times before, there are two levels to us. There's the personal level, the one that the dreams that are dealing with our personal everyday things, and there's the deeper level, the collective level, the archetypal level. Jung called it collective unconscious. Campbell called it the mythological dimension. And when we start to get in touch with this deeper dimension, what I call going inward and then backward, because in many of my dreams, you will find it in the book as well, is you're dreaming, you're in the dream, and then you have another dimension that suddenly a wall opens up or something that you walk through and you go into another deeper dimension. And that deeper dimension is pagan in nature. That was one of the reasons I needed to go to Scandinavia, because Scandinavia hasn't been so Christianized yet. You see? And the layer, the pagan layer, was just below the surface. So they had the festivals, like I described, for instance, the level of the collective unconscious. The story I said I've described in the book, where I was standing at the Midsummer Festival, and they put up the huge pole.
Maypole.
Yeah, maypole with there's your axis, there's your mountain, and at the apex they put up this beautiful ring of flowers, and then there are ribbons, white and red ribbons running down the sides. That's alchemical colors. White being the feminine moon, and red being the masculine sun. The two together. And at the apex is the ring, the renewal of nature. They have all these festivals, and the art and the mythology, everything moved me because it was touching that deeper mythological dimension, the deeper dimension of the collective unconscious. That's one of the reasons I needed to go there, is to be reconnected with that collective unconscious, that deeper level of ourselves.
What was it that drew you there in the beginning?
Well, the dream, when I was living in Perth, and as I write in the book, it was a disaster for me at that time. I work, I make a lot of money, and all I do is just dread the next day that I'm going to have to go back to that same empty, boring environment. And then I had the dream, we'll go there, see what happens. Go and recover some of your own roots. I still remember the day, the moment when I arrived at the Arlanda airport in Stockholm. When we were landing, it was a snowstorm. The plane had to circle once or twice around the airport because it was such a rough weather. Snowstorm, this is January. And when I landed, and you know, I was back, first of all, I was back in my beloved Europe, because, you know, I'm European. And then it felt like I'm home. And then, of course, you've got the whole pagan thingy still bubbling underneath in their culture. The paintings that I described, the artist paintings when I was staying with Leif, the guy that you know, generously agreed for me to stay during the summer because the job that I got in my profession finished within couple of months. You know, that means you're not supposed to be going in that direction anymore. Something else has to happen. Do you remember that in my book? And he took me in, and I was the extra pair of hands helping me along before the big rush of the summer season. And so he introduced me to the culture, to this you know, Finnish mythology, and the artist that was also painting his wife, his younger wife, the female figures. And they lived and they slept on this huge bed, which was a copy of a Viking bed. Do you remember that? With the dragon head at the front and so on. All this moved me. All this stuff, all this old pagan stuff really moved me. And then the festival, the Midsummer Festival. I mean, you know, they put the ring, the apex of the mountain, if you like, of nature, the wholeness of nature, symbol of the rebirth of the wholeness of nature, of being one with nature. They put that even on car antennas. And women were wearing the crowns on their head. That's the flower arrangement on the head. See, that's what the crown means for a king or a queen. See? The light, the wholeness that we are. That's at the crown. So that's why it's at the apex of the maple. So all this movement, I had to go and have a look, because in Australia we don't have any of this anymore. It's all been very westernized, and the only pagan festival that's left really is probably Christmas, and that's just materialism at its worst now, because all it is, you know, buying presents and buying so much food that you will never eat, because it's tradition to spend all this money and so on. That's really the only pagan festival that we don't even realize that it's a pagan festival, old pagan festival of celebrating the maple, the Santa, the tree of life. That's the Christmas tree. That's why we put lights around it. You know, that's the tree. That's the same tree when I entered the cave. When I finally entered the cave, and the guide, the female guide, brought me to the cave, to the stream, and she took from the stream, which was flowing from the roots of the tree. Remember that? You should drink, because this is where many men of old found their gold. This is not personal stuff. This is the deeper collective stuff, the collective stuff that still lives within me. And if you were to now look a little bit wider at what we're discovering in physics, for instance, and the quantum field and dark energy and so on, everything is interconnected. But there is also this dimension of memory where everything is remembered. That's the soul, and we have access to it. So it doesn't only live within you, but it's also outside of us as this energy consciousness, this soul. We are within it as well. It's within us, and we are within it. And it has this memory of the evolution of consciousness of humanity, actually of not just humanity, but over all nature of the planet Earth and the universe as well. It remembers everything. So you can have access to it if you become creative, like I did in the painting, the first three paintings, and then later the paintings, for instance, the dream paintings that I did of the vortex. Remember the vortex? The equal parts black and white, and this lady is taking me through underneath the water, through the stream, through the center to the other side. That's archetypal. That's a journey again to the underworld. And how you get there? How do you get in? Deeper, you get in through the very center. That's why we are always looking to the center. And if you took that image of the vortex and you put it up like this, that's your tree, because that's you climbing like a shaman, climbing up the tree to its apex on his drum, on her drum, to the rupture and so on. They get into a trance. They go into the trance, usually, sort of swaying back and forth, and then they beat their drum, and then something happens. They're out of the body and they travel up to the apex. And it is at the apex that you meet your guide, your help, your spirit guide, or your soul that is going to take you to the very center. And that's where you get initiated into the mystery.
So is that where in Sweden would you say you really had your awakening?
No, the awakening actually happens in the dreams and the initiations, but the real awakening happens when I processed, when I started to look deeper at what these things mean, so that I could compare my experience, my initiation, to what this means in mythology and depth psychology, because then I could make sense of what happened. Then you have this aha moment. Oh my God, what I've experienced is what people have always experienced. The shamans, the poets, the mad people, all the ones that the church has told, try to get rid of for the last 6, 7, 8 centuries or more.
But did that come to you in Sweden?
The dreams started to come when I was already in Perth. In fact, the earliest that I remember the experience of this divine feminine, the soul coming to me when I was 12 years old.
Right.
Remember, I write it in the book. I was still living in Poland, and it was after my uncle, my father's brother, disappeared. We didn't know where he was, and I was very, very close to him. I wasn't so close to my dad. It doesn't mean that my dad was bad or anything. He just worked a lot. He wasn't there. So I was closer to his brother, his younger brother. But the reason I was closer to him is because he lived with grandma. And grandma lived outside of town. And I liked being over there because I could do whatever I like. I could be myself. So that's why I was always closer to him. And he was more creative. He was a photographer and so on. He went missing. We didn't know where he was, and I was worried about him very much, like we all were. And then suddenly I have this, I wake up, I write about this in the book as well. I wake up in the middle of the night, and then there's someone is walking towards my bed. And I thought it was my dog, because my dog would fall asleep under the table, and then in the middle of the night, he would jump up. He would walk on the carpet. He could hear the noises on the carpet. And then he hops up and he sleeps next to me. But this time there was no hopping up onto the bed. I can hear some of the footsteps on the rustling on the carpet coming from the side of the outside window towards me. And then I realized with terror that I left my dog outside in the corridor that night. Not meant to be anybody walking on the carpet. And that's when someone sat next to me on the bed. I couldn't turn over. I was turned towards the wall, and I couldn't find the strength to turn over. I was so afraid. My heart was so pounding. I couldn't. I was awake. I heard everything. I saw the reflection of the little lamp that was, we always had on last night. I saw all that. I heard everything. But I couldn't turn over. I couldn't turn over and have a look who it was. I was so afraid.
So was your body paralyzed?
Yeah, it was paralyzed. I couldn't do it. And then I heard this, someone put it very gently, the hand on my shoulder, and I've never felt such a, the best the way he described is love, I think. Kindness, love, this stream of energy towards me. And I heard the voices in my head, no matter what's going to happen, you're going to be okay. Words without effect. No matter what's going to happen in your life, you're going to be okay. So back then already, this is the level of the collective unconscious that's coming. It wasn't a family member, it's not your ancestors that are coming, not like this. It is something else deeper. And then, where I was already in Perth, in Melbourne, when I moved later, of course, to Australia, then I moved to Melbourne, and I painted the paintings of her unknowingly, of course, as she is. Unknowingly, she's the collective unconscious, the divine feminine, the soul, the image of the missing half of the Godhead in our Western society, the feminine Godhead. The direct mystic experiences, that's what she is, the soul. She is the bridge, she is the door that allows us to have direct mystic experience of this deeper dimension of life, this collective unconscious dimension of life. And that's when I started to have the big dreams when I moved to Perth and she was there. And again, she didn't come as an ancestor or someone I knew or anything like that. She was an Egyptian princess that was standing on the banks of the river. Do you remember that in my book? And she took me out into the river, swimming underwater through the center of the vortex. I knew nothing about the vortex, nor did I know anything about Egyptian mythology. It's already there within you when you touch that deeper center. And the way I touched it is I started to, because I was so disappointed with everything, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to have a new job and I'm going to make so much money. And I did. And I'm going to be so happy. I lived in a trendy suburb. I lived river, the center of Perth. There's the river, and there's the expensive suburbs of, the trendy, most probably expensive, one of the most expensive suburbs. I lived there, just across the river, just on the riverbank. You would think you'd be happy. And there was a pub, there was all the cafes and things, and, people would, when they stole my address, there was no big deal. It just happened that I found a unit that was affordable. I don't know how I did it as well. It was at that place. But you would think you would be happy. You have this job and they pay so much money and so on, and you live in this trendy place. And so Perth is a beautiful place. It's always a nice weather and so on. But no. I was miserable. I was even worse. I thought, there's got to be more to life than this. So that's when you manage to get beyond all this shallowness, that you start to get in touch with that deeper part of yourself. And that's when she started to come back. Because she came when I was in that deep, deep grief moment when I was 12 years old. I was miserable and I was looking inward like I always do for some comfort. And that's when she came, because I was missing, we were worried about my uncle. He was my godfather. And she came. And then she came when I was in that crisis in Perth, before I started to travel to Scandinavia. One of the reasons I traveled to Scandinavia is, of course, because the crisis. I needed to go and do something else to recover the roots, the pagan roots. Because where I was going wasn't going anywhere really. Just as well I did, because suddenly all these things started to trigger back, the pagan things, the paintings. I was more creative, Like you probably read in the book, I set up my studio in the attic of the hostel. I remember that, and I started painting. And I was painting and painting and painting. I painted the vortex stream and all those things. I painted, and I had my first exhibition that year. And of course, although we were advertised everywhere, and everyone knew about the exhibition, but maybe 3 or 4 people came to have a look. And when they came and they looked, there was this silence. They couldn't really work out what was going on in the picture. But that's how it is when you create this from the deeper level, when the things start to come through. what Jung called not the spirit of the day, but the spirit of the depth. When that starts to come through, you won't find answers to what it is and what it is in our contemporary society. You have to dig deeper. And that's when you need mythology, you need depth psychology, you need fairy tales, you need to read all these people that have done this work and have gone that way. See? For this reason, you know, Jung's work is so important because he did it all by himself, really. His work with alchemy, for instance. The Red Book, the whole Red Book is his conversation with this deeper level of the spirit of the depth, what I call soul, the spirit, you know, the level, the divine level. And he painted everything religiously, and he wrote the words that were coming through him. That's the reason the guy, Frank, the Oracle, the walking James Morrison Oracle, up north gave me the little tape recorder, because that's what happens to you once you start to get out of your own way and you become representative of this deeper dimension in everyday life. It starts to talk through you. And that's when it would have been in 2000, I think, when I started my website and I started to communicate all these things to people for the first time. Well, I was always communicating while I was traveling. People would listen, you know, eyes like dinner plates, and after I finished, they would have been silent. Because what can you say? You can't say anything. You know, people don't know what to make it until if you haven't had an experience, similar experience, you're not going to understand. That's it, period. You can't explain to someone snow when they've never seen snow. You can't explain to someone what it's like to drive a car if they've never seen a car. So, you know, that's one of the other reasons I wrote this, is so that when you're reading and when you start to compare and make connections to your own dreams and experiences, that you have more mystic experiences, that you can say, oh my God, I have the same stuff. How it happened to me as well, you know? But then you can make a connection to what happens to you, because your experience and my experience are the same experience. It's just that the details might have, the images might have changed a little, but the experience is the same. Your experience would have been uniquely your own, and so is mine. But underneath all that, the archetypal event is exactly the same. You have come by a boat to another place, and you've had something happen. So have I. So have many people. You know, in one of the, I remember just listening to a recent lecture by Anne Baring, and she was showing her husband's paintings. He's an artist. She's also an introvert, and all these things come through him spontaneously. And in one of his paintings, he painted a journey on a boat during the night, and the light from the moon is the pathway that the boat is taking. Can you see? That's how you travel. It's like my dream when I was pulled by the boat and pulled by this man who was traveling on this moonbeam, if you like, to the other dimension, to the other island, where I finally met the queen and the king, and all the archetypes were standing behind them. Do you remember that moment? There was the wizard, there was the witch, there was the knight, there was the princess and prince, and all the archetypes were there. And I made that journey to that dimension. So you start to make connections between your experiences, and the others, and you can say, oh wow, then we must be all one, underneath all the differences and underneath all the languages, underneath all the belief systems. On the mystic level, we are all just one experience. We are all just one humanity, one nature experiencing itself, or one nature trying to understand itself. That's all it is. So, that's just a few examples from my book, The Journey, that, Frank, the crazy Frank, I remember, and me being so taken with that, and then I was so rudely awakened into reality that, it was my own inner voice said, well, come on, man, I mean, stop it, be real, what are you doing, stop chasing waterfalls, stick to the rivers and lakes that you used to. What are you doing? Why aren't you listening to me? I'm here all the time, but it's easy to get caught in that. It's really, really easy, especially when someone has this aura of otherness about them, this mystique about them, the way he looked, the way he talked, the way he played with the cards, and everything works. And you suddenly bang the thing, you're caught up. You forget about your own heart and listen to your own heart. Now that's one thing. And, the book is divided into two halves. You have the first half, my journey of coming into consciousness, and then you have the other half, the goddess, the divine feminine, the missing half of our Godhead, which is the feminine half, the feminine half, which is our direct mystic experiences, the things that the church has sort of the church has prohibited us from having, because we were only allowed to have a spiritual experiences through the church, not our own. If you had your own, that would have been a sin. You would have been a heretic, and you would have been burned on the stake. I mean, I've said it so many times before. If this was 17th century, I would have been gone so long, long time ago. Gone with the smoke.
We were probably all there with you.
Yeah, I would have never had the opportunity to write a book. Had me long time ago. Someone would have said something. You were in league with the devil. So that's a few things that I wanted to point out with the book. And so you got the two halves of the book. The first half, which is my journey, and the important bits and pieces in there are how to process all these things. There is two things that are, there's wisdom which is still stuck in process, and there is wisdom which you already understand and integrate it into your everyday life. The things that are still stuck in process, that is to say, they're stuck in images and events, but you don't understand what they mean yet. And what I mean by that, to understand, you would have to know the connection, making connections to mythology, to depth psychology, to fairy tales, to movies, to how we live our life, and then give me examples. Then I know you understand. And that's how we process our stuff. Like I gave you the last chapter, I was thinking about how am I gonna finish this book. This is a pretty hard and pretty difficult book to understand as it is, and I probably made it even more difficult to understand by putting the last conclusion, where I make all these connections to movies, for instance, and Matrix and Chronicles of Narnia or Lord of the Rings. Do you remember that? It is all about this mythological journey to the underworld, to the Atlantis, to this metaphor of the most inward Atlantis, the ground of being, and there recovering the treasure of the soul, identifying with a divine part, and then bringing that into everyday life. And then you can start to compare the events that are happening all around, and you will see it reflected in everything. Like in the movie, Matrix, Neo gets the message on the computer screen, wake up, Neo. That's his wake-up call. Wake up because you're asleep. See? You're not paying attention to what's going on in your life. You're asleep. You're caught up in the society and its TV values. That's when you're asleep. That's when you're told to wake up. And then the crew of Morpheus and so on slowly take him out of the matrix, out of the sleeping masses of people, the TV values and so on. And he sees for what it is. It's just it's an illusion. The reality beneath all that. And he makes his journey eventually. Slowly fights with the myth, the ego, the one that tells you, well, no, you have to get an education. You have to get married and you have to have kids, and then you have to be happy and buy yourself a Volvo and a dog, and everything is as it should be. But it's not. So so Neo makes it all the way to the center of the creator of the matrix and so on, and then the final scene of the third matrix, he's not fighting with the machine. He's blinded, if you remember. He has a blindfold across his eyes. He can't see. The only way that he's actually making the balance between the machines and the people is through his inner vision. And that's when the machines finally come into agreement with the humans, and you have a new world, a new reality is born. So that's when the inward, what we see, the machine, the life of the machine, and the life of the human, the soul, or the inward, the underlying reality that supports it all, finally comes into balance. So that's how Neo did it, you know. Or you got, so if you haven't made it all the way yet to the conclusion, that you know, it's an article I wrote years ago about symbols. Someone was asking me about symbols, mythological symbols, and that's where I wrote this. It's in part based on Campbell. He's monomyth. If you're familiar with the idea of the monomyth and the journey of the you know, you mapped out as a call to adventure, the inward quest, the initiation, the recovery of the treasure, and then return. And you return, when you return, you live as a whole human being. You know, one foot is centered in this visible everyday reality, while the other is firmly inward into this invisible reality of the soul. And you're the mediator that keeps the balance between the two realities. They're not split, but we are living in this physical reality, and our attention is usually on the outside. We can't sense them, but our intuition can, our dreams can, and our visions can, and all that sort of stuff. So that's where you recover. That's the recovery of the soul. That's the recovery of the inner treasure. And that's what Neo found out when he couldn't see with his physical eyes, but he found out that he could see with his inner eye, the eye of the heart. And that's when finally the balance between humans and the machines was reached. So I write about all that. That's the conclusion of the book. Yeah.
What is your most mystical experience?
Oh man. The cave. The cave, that also woke me up, you know, in the middle of the night while she told me to drink from the water, where, you know, and she was singing in poetry, not in talking to me in phrases, but singing in poetry. She was saying, drink, for it's where many men of old found their gold. Can you see? It rhymes. By that time, I was already writing poetry, and one of the ways that I found I was learning to write is when things were rhyming, and that's singing. That's why how writing a song is as well. It's like singing, and things flow. So see, that's one of the mystic experiences that really woke me up. But the other one was, do you remember when I got off the train and I walk along the dirt track by myself, and there's the dead fish, the big black dead fish? What did I pull out from the dead fish? The grail. Yeah. And when I looked inside the grail, what was inside the grail? There was this man, the holy man, sitting at the center. He was a hologram. He's dressed in white. He's got long hair, but he has sitting cross-legged, but he has 4 arms. Each arm is pointing to the cardinal direction, north, south, west, east, north. That is to say, he's everything. He's at the center of everything. And then I look at him and I see, oh, gee, this is Jesus. He's got his face. He's Jesus, you know, with the, I didn't even have the little beard that I have now and all that stuff. He had all that, like the image of that archetypal image. And the closer I looked, the closer and the more crystallized the image became, the more I could see. Suddenly I thought, oh shit, he's got my face. And that's when I woke up. That really stirred me up. And it was not until years and years later that I understand what a real hologram is. Hologram is like the universe is fractal. It repeats at every level, at every, no matter how small you're gonna cut, no matter how tiny into tiny bits you're gonna cut the hologram, it will always carry the whole message within it. The whole image will be there. That's fractal. In other words, the universe is the center, this which the energy that supports us, everything is fractal. That is to say, like I've written in the book, everything just repeats at every level. So you have this journey to the most inward center, and then it repeats in everything you see, whether it is marriage, whether it is a business, whether it is a government. Look at the government, the structure of a government, the center of the structure of a government. You have opposites. You have the left party, you have the right party, you have the man in the middle that says the order, and so on, the Speaker of the House and whatnot. He always sits higher than everybody else. He's the mediator between the opposites. Everything reflects everything, this reality. This you know, in society is completely unconscious, but this reality of mediating and bringing the two into one, the visible and the invisible. Can you see? Can you see?
So,
Yeah.
has any of your family, have you influenced any of them?
Probably not. My family's probably they're still, you know, they're still stuck in that approved materialism, if you like. So I haven't really. My sister, you know, when she was, remember when she arrived and stayed with me just before I left for Scandinavia, and she arrived and stayed with me in Perth. And what happened after that? You know, I thought, oh my God, how am I going to live here by herself? And my parents are screaming, what are you doing? You're leaving your sister. She's not going to be able to cope on her own and so on. And then she gets a job. So I can go. Remember that? Yeah. When she was staying with me and I was already having this really deep dream, there is something which is called, it jumped. This mysticism, this deeper dimension, the archetypes, they jump so they can touch the other person. And she had this dream, I remember. She was sleeping on the couch that I used to sleep before I go to bed. And of course, we were living in the unit together. And she has this dream. She walked past a fog, a really thick fog. And she walks past and walks out of it. And there sits a man, a beautiful man, also long hair, a little goatee beard, big blue eyes. And she walks up closer to him, and he said, she realized, oh, this is Jesus. And he looks at her and he says, you are like all the men in your family. So she had this mystic experience the moment she started to stay with me. So it jumped. You know, in Jungian psychology, when you there is this, it's called transference. When you start to work with someone on a deeper level, and you have had such mystic experience in heaven, and the other person hasn't, you expect that this transfer will happen, and the other person will start to experience as well. You being so close to you, the energy jumps, it touches the other person. It makes them open to it, if you like. When I was married and we lived, you know, obviously very close together, my wife started to have these experiences because it touched her. Me being so open to it, it opened her, whether she was afraid of it or not, but she was. it freaked her out. One of her big dreams that she had, big experiences, was, I write about this in the book, is she finds herself standing in front of a tree, a small tree, a bush, and then the bush comes on fire, but it's not burning, she said. The bush is on fire, but it's not burning. It's blue flame. See, there's from Old Testament where Moses was on the mountain. An angel was talking to Moses through the bush, to the burning bush, but the bush wasn't consuming it. And the next moment she's climbing up a mountain, and the mountain is like sand, so it's very difficult for her to climb up. And when she climbs to this apex, the apex, this is the mountain, the cosmic axis at the apex. She climbs up there and she realizes that it's an extinguished volcano. In other words, the emotions that are holding us back from experiencing all this is being stuck in society that ridicules all these things, the unconscious compulsions and reactions have been extinguished. That's what a volcano usually means. When you have a volcano erupting in your dream, means you're becoming a bit too emotional. You're projecting your out in your inward experiences out there somewhere. You might have fallen madly in love with someone, and you go, "Oh my God, this is my beloved of the heart." Then you might have a dream that your volcano is exploding. But when the volcano is extinct, you have brought all these projections inward. And that's actually the shadow work that Jung talks about. A lot of the shadow work is bringing all these projections, all these unconscious compulsions and instincts inward so that you can resolve them inward, that it's an inward event, not projected outside. Anyway, so she walks out there and she's at the apex and it's an extinguished volcano. And what does she see? She sees the enormous rim of the volcano is lined with people. They're all holding hands and looking inward. The oneness of humanity. She experiences the oneness of humanity. We are all one in this together. They're all holding hands. See, it's not that different than Black Elk, the Sioux holy man, Black Elk, the shaman, who when he finally reached the top of the mountain, he saw the great big flowering tree around which he said there were hoops of all the nations, but there was just one hoop. So they were all one. Everything was one around the tree. And the tree was the tree of one mother and one father, the union of the opposite, flowering tree, like my flowering tree in the cave. So that's the mystic experiences when you start to have them, and you have someone that is close to you, or working with someone close to you, they will have them as well. And if they're here, if people are still afraid, then expect that they will freak out. Because first of all, if they're very religious, all this stuff is forbidden by the church. So they start to go, "Oh my God, I must be a sinner. I must have made contact with whatnot," and so on. And you have to really gently start to work your way back and explain and so on. It's nothing bad. And really got to give examples from history, from culture, from mythology, that what you've experienced is not something that is strange or bad, but people have had this experience for thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, probably. You know, we have evidence, archaeological evidence, that shamans and so on, people have made these sanctuaries, made these temples inside caves with the center dedicated to the deity hundreds of thousands of years ago. So there's your center that you go to, and that's the meeting of the opposite, the union of the opposite, and the oneness, the revelation of a oneness. I'm starting to lose my voice, and I don't have anything to drink. I haven't, you know, there are days where I don't say a word and my voice is gone. Someone says something to me and I'm whispering because I haven't said a word and the voice has disappeared. So I talk to the parrots, and I talk to my dogs, and I was talking to parrots this morning, but I have to be doing this talk today, so so I'm going to be talking to you. So I don't sound like an idiot. I lost my voice today. It's all quiet out there now. They're all asleep.
Yeah, they did get quiet.
Yeah, it's got quiet. They're asleep. I'm going to have to go and have a look because it's a big mess. You know, half the food's on the floor. The food bowls are on the ground on the bottom of the cage as well. But it's quiet now, so I don't want to go up there and wake them up, because once I wake them up, it's going to be a new racket as well again. So, is there any questions that you might have about my book and all this stuff? You've held it in your hand. You had to look at it, and I know that there are probably mistakes and grammar mistakes and things in it, but looking past all that, does it work? You know, was it worth it for me to publish this book? What do you think?
Yes, absolutely. It's the
Yeah.
first book I've actually enjoyed in a long time. Most
Okay.
books lately I can look to for a little inspiration or something, but I get through like maybe a paragraph, page and a half at the most. But I've actually really enjoyed sitting with it. And even though it's, you know, I'm not reading it fast, it feels good. You know what I mean? There's something about you and your soul in it, or something that connects. Or maybe
Yeah.
it's just that I feel good because I feel like I'm on an okay path. I'm fine. You know, this is the journey, and I know where I am on it. And I'm just working on because of the parts of it that I've already had and how I felt through them, giving myself the courage to know it's okay to just go that next step. I've hesitated when I've gotten close, but
Yeah.
my drawing and artwork keeps going to the same place, and you talk about it. So, I mean, I know where I am, and even that it's okay, you know, like, I don't know what to expect, but I don't want to know what to expect, exactly how I'm going to feel. And you say you can't really describe it anyway, because if you haven't done it, like the car, and I really liked your examples of how you can't describe it to someone who hasn't done it, because there's no word for it that they would understand.
No. The only thing that you can do is, you know, like all the mystics have always tried to explain the experience, you can't, because there's a whole thing into it, the feelings, your body reactions, and what you see, what you don't see. There's always a lot more than you see than you can actually put into words. There's always a lot more. Like that fish dream, you know, the fish, the me having dig into the fish and pulling out the cup and so on. You know, the only thing you can say is you have to be there. You can't be there. You have to have your own experience, you know. But that's the grail, you know, if someone wants to understand what the grail is. But that's exactly why I wrote this, you know, in a way that really putting myself out there on the line, because to be so open with you, with your life, of what happened, the decisions, the very difficult decisions I had to make, and walk away from so many people. Most people won't understand that because they haven't had the same pressure.
Yeah,
You know,
that's hard though, isn't it? I mean, when you know it's coming, or you can sense it, but like, I wonder what that's going to look like in the end, because it's so contrary to what, you know, I was programmed to believe you do, whether it's family or anything else, you know.
Yeah, you know, I had to fight my family to get to where I am. I had to walk away, like I wrote in the book, at least from 2 relationships.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because you try to take people with you, but you can't, because my journey is not going to be the same as their journey or your journey. It'll be a completely individual experience. It'll be different. It will happen. The underlying thing is the same, but the way it happens is completely different. It'll be uniquely to you. You know, it's going to be maybe somewhere where you walk into Walmart. I've never seen a Walmart, you know, but to you, something might happen when you have walked into a Walmart, or you know, or where suddenly snow falls and triggers a dog. And I haven't seen snow for years now. So my triggers will be different to your triggers, but the underlying archetypal journey is always the same, always the same. And that's why I wrote this, and I was able to write this, knowing that it's going to connect to people, because those that are making the journey, even without realizing that they're making the same journey, they will be making the same journey, but in their own unique, different way. So at the end, that's why I wrote this long conclusion at the end, is that when you see what happened to you, when you see what happens in mythology and what happens in in movies and so on, and you can start to make the connections, and you can go, oh my God, I'm on the same path. It's just my own unique way, but I'm on the same way. I'm traveling in the same direction. But you can't expect it.
I
You can't
thought,
expect it. You just gotta go.
uh, didn't you channel a lot of this?
Yeah. That's why when you have finished your work, when you're living in this balanced way, when the soul becomes your companion everyday life, and you're creative and you write like I write and so on, then its information starts to come through. Its importance, you become its envoy in everyday life, and then you're not afraid to say things like I posted today, for instance. That's so controversial for to post this thing that the saying of Timothy Leary. That's very controversial. People don't like that, to hear that very much. The caterpillar doesn't understand the butterfly.
I love that one.
Yeah, but people don't like it. They hate it. They go, "Oh my God!" But the caterpillar is the butterfly, and they always understand. No, they don't. I know it. I've lived through it. You know what I mean? And I experience it every day. You can't. How can you like the mystic experience? How am I going to explain to someone what it's like to be skiing down a hill where they haven't even seen snow? You can't. So then you're not afraid to say these things, and then the strength comes when you have made this. We have reintegrated the soul into your everyday life. So you don't really just quote other people. Suddenly you feel the urge to have your own quotes, to have your own sayings, to write the little things that you might want to write, things that you wanted to say but you were never brave enough to say. And then maybe like with me, it was, well, maybe build a website when I was 30 years old or 33 years old or something. And I suddenly said, well, maybe build a website and share your experiences with others. That was my first step, sort of, to making it really publicly. But I've always spoke about it, even when this strange thing, even when I was traveling. There's a moment, I don't know if you remember, when I arrived in Narvik, and I met this guy from the US. He was a young student, college student. And what does he do? He is collecting mystical experiences, especially dreams, for his professor. He was a professor who was a professor of not psychology. What's the other one? Anyway, and so he jotted down everything I said.
Parapsychology?
No. It's all of that word. Anyway, it will come to me. Yeah, and it always there's the opportunity that says, look, it's okay. You can say these things. There will be an environment, a safe environment, where you will be able to say these things. It will present itself to you. So one of the reasons, for instance, I built my page, the Inner World Retreat Center, is, wherever I see someone that is trying to say something that's really difficult things to say in our society, which ridicules them, I will post that in there. And I won't allow anyone else to post anything new age or anything in there. But the real stuff that comes through to someone, or someone writes a poem or paints a painting, nowadays there's less and less things, but there are some people that are doing it. I will put that in there. It's sort of a safe place where they can, the birds are fighting. Wait. Yeah, it's like a sort of, I like to keep it as a safe place for people so they're not going to get shut down by these critics, by these naysayers, especially there seems to be an army of men out there who suddenly want to explain to you why you're wrong and mansplain to you, as I call it. You know, I had a few. They would. The thing about them, you will recognize them in such a way. They will never click like or dislike. If there was a dislike button, they would click the dislike button. They would never share your posts, but they will always comment on them. Always. I had a few, and I had to get rid of them because when you are in this, especially at the level where you can shaken up your confidence, what comes through needs to be said. Of course, you can put it in words which is not so offensive to people. So, for instance, like the divine feminine, the idea of the missing half of the Godhead is offensive to me. I remember I had one guy who was in the inner world retreat center when I started to post about the divine feminine on the Mary Magdalene. And the first thing that he posted underneath, he never clicked like, that, oh, she's a whore. We know her as a whore. That was it, you know. I got locked out of my own group. You know, there were people who have made complaints to Facebook about me, but you've got to have, when it comes to these things and stuff, you become an envoy, and so you write about this, and you stand for the missing half of things, the visions, the dreams, the missing sense, the mythological journey to the underworld, the recovery of the soul. You need to grow thick skin. People will shut you down because what they know is really what is just been told about this, you know, people teaching that you got to just live in the moment. That's all it is. Don't worry about the past. Don't worry about the future. It's just feeling it in the moment. It's just fine when you're there. That's intuition, living in the moment. Now, what happens when you get through that moment, through the center of the deeper dimension, the collective unconscious, and you suddenly experience these spirals, the feminine figures, like what I've painted, the words that come through you, so gold, spirit, and all this mythological stuff. You can't dismiss it because it's there. So, you know, one of the reasons, like I said, one of the reasons the group that I started is just a safe place for other mad people that have to say what they have to say. There you go.
Which site are you saying you're allowing people to post these things?
The Inner World Retreat Center, not the Art of Practical Mysticism or Mythological Soul and Her Symbols. These are pages on my wall, on my Facebook, but the Inner World Retreat Center. Like I posted just recently, one woman made a poem, you know, from herself about Sophia. I don't know if anyone read that. There was a book, I think it was Eva Ryder, who made a poem of Sophia. Yeah. Or Eleanor Gaddon, you know, the book that she uploads her quotes because she speaks.
Well, I didn't think any of those were strange.
Yeah, well, because you're used to it now. But there are people who will find them offensive. So, you know, especially when you're talking about women and that the God is also a feminine image. Because in the patriarchal tradition, in all the three religions, Abrahamic religions, the feminine has been, of course, completely wiped out. And the feminine is your dreams, your visions, your mystic experiences, your creative epiphany, your intuition, your feminine intuition. And that's completely missing in our culture. Shamanism, really, that's what it is. Mysticism, shamanism. You know. For instance, even using Rumi as an example, he's a really well-known mystic. And, you know, that's Sufi. That's the mystic branch of Islam. Sufi. He's more to the point. He's more blunt poems are never shared. Only his love and light poems. But he said some really revealing things that people don't share that so much. It's only the things that are soft and allowable that people share. the things that everyone will agree on. Everything else, the other stuff is too controversial. Same with, for instance, Kabir, or Hafiz, they've said some really controversial things, really meaningful things, important things, but it will be the more gentle, the love and light stuff, as I call it, that we share, not
And Krishnamurti.
people.
Krishnamurti.
Sorry?
Krishnamurti.
Krishnamurti. Yeah. He also said some really to the point things. His work is all about being a lamp unto yourself. Really, that's his main message. Don't worry about gurus and so on. That's his main message. But he's more to the point here. But then again, he had a huge following in India. So he was a guru that's trying to teach others to find their own guru of the house, which I don't think it worked. But he's been called one of the greatest teachers of our time, spiritual teacher. But I think he failed in that because in India, people still just worship gurus. You have to excuse me for a moment, but I have to go and have a look at these birds. 2 minutes.
I'll share something with you all.
I'm listening.
I have this friend that I met about a month ago on Facebook, and I think we have like 600 mutual friends, and I liked his post. So I went on and, before I accept any friend's request, I see what they post. And he does every other week on Sunday at 11. His name is Salvador Poe. And I guess he was into sex, drugs, rock and roll in New York and in his 20s. And then he decided, he needed more meaning in his life. So he went to India. And I think he's been over there about 11 years. Now, I don't know how long he's been doing this Sunday morning thing. But I went on Sunday morning to just see the format and what he talked about and to see how many people are on there. And there were 70 people on from all over the world. Now, he really didn't talk that much. And, he said some things at the beginning so my takeaway with all of this is that I found from my takeaway that people need a forum to express themselves, and they were looking, at him to give them answers. And he let them ask a lot of questions, and I'd say, at least half the group were men. But I found the questions not very deep. And, I stayed on about an hour. I don't know how long it went. But I think people do need a forum. They are searching, and they're trying to get answers. And, I don't know how long he's been doing this. And, of course, on the chat, apparently he was live on Facebook, and then he did it on Zoom. I joined with Zoom. So it was a little distracting when he was reading the chats, and, there were long pauses. Well, in the meantime, the 70 people just sat there like bumps on a log. A few people asked questions, so I thought, okay, I'm going to stir the pot a little bit. So I wrote in on chat, can you talk about quantum jumping? And he read it and he said, I don't know what that is. Why don't you tell us about it, Pamela? Well, I was the new kid and I wasn't going to come over there, So I just said, why don't you throw it out to the group? And which he didn't do. But then I got a private message from another man saying, I'd like to know about it. Don't be shy. Step up. And I said, no, I'm getting the pulse of this group, to see. But, really, most of them were all white faces, really, from all over, you know. But I was surprised that they weren't more alive, if that's the right word. I don't know. That I was just saying, I think people, are looking for something, they're searching. And, I don't know how they found this man. I guess the same way, how people find me. But I was surprised there wasn't more depth to the group. And, I won't be able to be on the next time they meet. But I'll go on it one more time and just see the level of the people on there. But I was pretty surprised. And one man did comment about being alone, and I guess, he was retired and he had been married a long time and his wife wasn't into this, and how alone he felt. And then somebody else apparently commented, yes, they feel that way. And I wrote back and I said, well, probably, this was in chat that I wrote, probably most people on this call feel that way. And, so people, started, and he did say, well, there were a lot of responses to this man's comment. But I think, Peter, just keep doing what you're doing and it'll grow.
Yeah, but what I'm doing is for most people, I mean, really 99.999%, it's too deep. It's way too deep. And because what I'm talking about, what I've written in the book is really the real work. That's the real work. And not everyone really, hardly anyone is able to commit to it.
But then there are people like us on the call, like Julie said, that you do want to be stretched, that it holds your interest.
Of course. But out there, when you have the gurus and you have these people that are helping others or talking about this deeper or the spiritual things, you never ever see anything really the depth of stuff, what you have to go and what you have to sacrifice to get to where you are. That is to get to the recovery of the soul and then reintegrate that into your everyday life, so that it becomes your partner, your living other in this world, so that things start to percolate within you and you start to become creative again. Like Julie, painting or writing or whatever. You must have had some kind of creativity in you when you were a kid, and then something happens.
Mm-hmm.
Life takes over, society takes over, your responsibility. They call adulting takes over. You have to be an adult now. Well, there comes a moment where you have to give up this adulting business and you got to go back to being a kid again. You've got to start continuing creative again, climbing trees. Well, don't climb trees because you could break your arm like I did once.
But I have found myself being like a little girl in certain situations. And it's fun, whether it's my voice or my words that I choose. I have a musician who I really love and his band, and I'll say, come on, play something you made up, not play something, please play an original piece, no, play something you made up.
Something spontaneous. I remember once I was sitting with this was when I was in high school, and this girl that I knew, she was playing the piano, and she said to me, we were both drunk, and she said to me, come, you're going to play I've never played the piano in my life, I've seen it a few times at the kindergarten, on the piano in the kindergarten, I've never played it in my life. And then so she was playing eloquently, and there was me next to her around, but sooner something started to happen. I was getting more eloquent, softer. I could feel the keys. I could feel the rhythm coming through me. And in, maybe 2 or 3 minutes later, we were suddenly playing in sync, and I was improvising. And I've never played the piano before.
Yes, and you can
totally.
download, can't you? I mean, and that's what I'm looking forward to, an experience like that where I have that sort of spontaneous download. I'd love to download him and come home and play my guitar. But
yeah, exactly like that. And I had an experience like that with the guitar. I was on a trip from Adelaide to Melbourne. I would have been then maybe 18. And a friend of mine had a guitar. And she said, well, do you play a guitar? I said, no. Again, we were drunk. And I said, well, no, but I'll try. And suddenly I took the thing. I couldn't get the things right, but I got the rhythm right. They go, oh my God, you can play the guitar. I've never played the guitar before. And then I wondered, ding, 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 but it was making sense. You know what I mean? So if you're not afraid, and if you think to yourself, oh, I can do this, and just see what happens, go and play around. Sooner or later, when you get out of your own way, I don't know what happens. Things just take over, and you can do stuff.
Yeah.
Stuff just happens. That's creativity. That's how Beethoven wrote his symphony. He was walking around town, and he was going, bam, 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 bam. What the hell is this? Bam, 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 bam. It was in his head all the time. Then one day he wrote it down, and that's the beginning of his fifth symphony. Bam, 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 and the rest he improvised. The famous musician, what's his name? Frank Zimmer. He won so many awards for his music, and now he's teaching. He doesn't write film music anymore. He teaches people how to write music. Do you know how he writes his music? He told me. He told not me, but I saw an interview. That's how I paint or write poetry. He says I collect it. He walks around and he hears a bit here, he hears a bit there. He records this a little bit, and then he goes record this. This moved me. And then he goes into his room, he locks himself up. He says, I got that all like now it's easy because it's on my smartphone. I put it into my computer, and then I work it out together until it makes sense. And there it is. 2 days later, there's this award-winning music for the Gladiator. It's pieces that he collected that moved him along the way. It's like me collecting pieces along the way of my journey. It was all collecting pieces. That's all it was. I went there and I got a little bit more from there. I went there and I found something over there. And I found another dream, and I found another intuition. And then I found a song that was, the soul was telling me off. Don't chase waterfalls, stick to the waters and lakes that you used to. That found stuff. It's like finding music, And this painting, do you know how I found this painting? It's a collection of different bits and pieces that I collected. I would go to a library, and I got the Art Nouveau books, because the Art Nouveau talks to me. The ladies were elegant, wore nightgowns, and they were in the classic S-curve and so on. And it was easy to copy them because it wasn't really, it was drawn rather than painted, not three-dimensional, but two-dimensional. It was easy to copy them. And the pyramids, I found the pyramids, it was an ad for Benson and Hedges cigarettes. I found it on the back, at the back of a glossy magazine. And oh my God, I like these colors, So, and the jacket was from something else, and had blue hat is from somewhere else. So I was collecting, and the green background was from somewhere else. So I was collecting all these things, and then I stuck them together, and there it is. That's exactly, you're walking around and you're finding this inspiration. And then you come home, like I still walk around with a notepad when things kind of reveal themselves to me. And then I make a post, like the things that I post on Facebook. Now I haven't been writing many things. You might have noticed that I repost the things that I wrote years ago. But I still walk around and write a few bits and pieces. And something that comes to me when I walk around on them, when I'm, especially my morning walk with dogs. They collect these things, this revelation, these insights, this mystical stuff. All this is mystical experience, all of it. You know, it's like you.
Well, see, that's what I call quantum jumping.
Yeah, or whatever you want to call it. You know, whatever you want to call it, because you are inside the quantum. The quantum is that energy consciousness that supports the universe and enlivens everything, and it is you as well. The whole thing is also you. It's the little you and it's the greater you, the two working together. And inside of this quantum, there is this memory stuff that has the memory of the evolution of the entire universe, of humanity. But it also has this finding answers to stuff. You know, like Nikola Tesla finding, I write about this too in the book. He found the answer to his electrical motor problem. He didn't know how to make it work. And then, remember, he was walking and suddenly it hit him that it had to be a rotational circuit. When one magnet on, off, and then it rotated, and then it pumped and it had electricity. It was making electricity. He had that in the vision. He dropped to his knees and he wrote it down on the sand and whatnot. See, you're walking around and you're collecting this mystic experience. Campbell had that as well. He used to grab a book, mythology, and he would be reading. He said this many times, I remember. He had a chair that was given to him and a little table. That was his studio. That was where he worked. And he was alone, and he's reading, and his thing was to underline things. Something occurred to him. He underlined it, and then he made his own comment in his own words. That's how he learned. That's how things came through him. And if you have wondered perhaps why the margins on my book are so huge here, is because I could never find enough room to write in all the other books, because that's exactly what I do as well. I underline and then I write something in my book. That's why you have such huge margins. You can see it. See? That's what it's for.
That's
So
when you read between the words and you read between the lines.
Yeah, that's my madness coming through. You know, it's not a mistake that, oh my God, it's not centered, but it's there for a reason. I wanted to give this reading to you so that you have the space. Like I write, I mean, so many books I couldn't find. Just an example. See, this is Campbell's, The Power of Myth. Can you see how little room there is on the side? See?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought, oh, that sucks. You know, there's no room for me to write. I have to write really small in between the lines. Doesn't work. So I thought, no, mine is going to be better. So there you have, you know, how much you can write poems in there if you like. That's the madness. That's awesome. All this is mystical experiences when you write.
That's what I did on this page. I wrote a poem at the top.
I can show you books and books. I have books that are underlined so many times that I have to use different colors because, yeah, look. See?
Yes. Oh my gosh.
That's how it works. Suddenly when it hits you and you follow a thread, you find these things that are talking to you and you underline everything. And then you write you know, you might write something on the top and you make a poem from it in your own words.
Some days I pick a colored pencil to read and write with and it sort of seems like it's the mood of the day, the symbolic color. But this one got an interesting little doodle on top of that shelf.
Yeah. Sometimes it will just be drawings that will come through. Sometimes it'll be letters that come through. Look at this one, for instance. Another one, another example.
You drew a generator.
I did. Do spirals.
You know, there's lots of everywhere. Look.
Yeah.
All my books are like that. Someone says, oh, no, you can't do that to books. You can't draw. I said, that's what it's for. That's what books are for. You not just read them. You experience them. You experience them.
When you taught us that, it was like liberating for me because I was raised, you know, that you don't deface a book like that, you know, and it's so fun to do that.
The book talks to you. Do you remember me was saying, I wrote an article about talking to everything? Because everything is consciousness. That's what quantum has shown us. Everything has consciousness. Nothing is just dead matter. Matter is conscious. So if you make friends with the book, you'll love it because it speaks to you, it will speak back to you. That's the mystery. That's the mystic experience as well. It's not only dreams or visions or intuitions when you get stuck in the car and the car's number plate in front of you suddenly has a meaning of life. That's not the only thing. It's like books as well. Jung did exactly the same thing. He locked himself out. That's why he built the tower on the lake. See, on his lake, on the lakefront, there is the image of the soul, the lake, the tower. Started off with a tower, and then it ended up being a castle. The castle is also an image of like Barnstable looking for the castle, and it was in the castle that he found the Grail and so on. So it's all archetypal images. And Jung did exactly the same thing. There's a story when during the building of his tower, a wrong stone arrived. Instead of being a cornerstone, rectangular, it was perfectly square, a cube. And the stonemason, the managing stonemason got really angry and said, "Oh, we have to send this back. This isn't the right thing." The moment Jung saw the stone, he said, "No, that's my stone. I don't know what I have to do with it, but that's my stone." And it's on the stone that he wrote in Latin the words to Caliber. And Caliber is a little, in alchemy, is a little being which is like the divine child, which is the finish of alchemy, the elixir of alchemy, the final union of the opposites that taken place. And he finally had that. He's got all four faces, of course, chiseled out, but on there is that the moment when he finally found the union of the opposites and he put that into stone. And that's why it was a stone, because we even say philosopher's stone, or the Grail is a stone, the mystery is a stone, the water of life is a stone, because it's eternal. You can find a stone today, you put it under a tree, you dig it up 2,000 years later, it'll be exactly the same. It's eternal. That's the eternal part of you, which you project onto the stone. See? So you find things, you use things all the time. I mean, in my paintings, I found them all. They found me, if you like, but you have to be open and creative to it. So that's why books are so, like these books are so valuable, because they're full of archetypes in here, full of mythology. And suddenly you will open you up deeper and deeper and deeper to this experience. And something's going to happen, and something is going to start to talk to you. There will be a hello from the other side. And once you connect to that once, and you learn to connect to it again and again and again, it becomes a habit. And then there's an open channel between you and the mystery. And it starts talking to you. And you have a friend for life. And you know things, you can know things in advance, you know solutions if you've got a health problem or someone has a health problem, you can find a solution to that. You can tell someone that this is your problem, but whether they're going to believe you or not, that's another story. So, well, there you go. Like I said, there's going to be 4 of us. There were 2 others that left. I think I've upset.
Laurie Waits wrote a chat saying her sound was so off that she couldn't hear, and so she jumped off. And Pat said she was on for a minute and then she got bumped off. I think it's
That's interesting, isn't it?
He said
there's going to be an intimate
Maybe it's a timing problem.
She tried to get back on a couple of times and she couldn't get back on. So, and Amy was supposed to be on tonight, but her father came up yesterday, and he's going to be there.
Like this, the unconscious has its own way of working things. And the ones that, like I wrote just recently something from you, the ones that are meant to find you will find you. These are the ones.
I believe that.
Yeah. So, Like I said, my work is deep, but obviously it is there for a reason. You have found me for a reason. We found each other for a reason, because something wants to come through you. Okay? Is there any questions? Or you will just stunned?
Oh, you think there's more than
Well, I'm
Well,
grateful. Thank you for doing the writing. Birthing a book is no small feat in the first place, and especially when it is your life like that.
Yeah,
It's
I
so
have to be
revealing.
really thankful, first of all, to Catherine, because Catherine sort of pushed me into writing. I
Yay,
was
Catherine.
thinking about this writing for years and years and years and years. But it's such a overwhelming task to write a
It
book.
is.
So difficult that, I kind of put it together in a month, a couple of weeks. And it was really then the task of Pamela to sort out my disaster spelling, and she did a
well,
marvelous job.
yeah, it was really, I knew so much of it was channeled and it was trying to break up the parts so it was more readable,
Yeah.
and I thought I'd finished it. And then when I got back from Vegas, he said, no, I hadn't finished it. And so, I started on it, but, and then he wanted me to read it again. And I'm going, oh my God, no, I can't, I'm not focused enough. So
This,
my copy will be here tomorrow. I've got it all on my computer, but
this has been writing, I've been writing this now for 50 years. That's a whole life in there. That's again, what I've said in here, what I've shared within the book, I haven't shared with many people, especially the mystic experiences, because people don't understand. It's too much. It's like, oh my God, oh geez, Louise, give me yoga and lentils. I can understand that stuff. But this, you need psychologists. No, you don't. You just got to take it one step at a time, whatever you can digest of it. And then you compare, then you will realize that you've had experiences. Even as a kid, you've had this experience of sinking into your bed when you're falling asleep. That's the moment when you're leaving the body. I am sure every one of you had this experience. Suddenly, bang, and you're sinking into the bed. Something else is happening, and you hear something, someone saying something you might not recall, but you have made contact with the other deeper dimension.
well, when you were telling about the experience of you being asleep and having the dream and then Frank choking you,
Yeah.
that sounded like a very lucid dream.
Yeah, it was what that moment when I was just waking up and I'm still in the dream.
Right,
Motion of it woke me up. But
right.
when you're sensitive, when you pay attention to your own self, to your own inner guidance, it will always be there, even in this very dramatic way of showing to you, well, get off this stupid way. Listen to yourself. Listen to, I'm here. You don't need to go and worship anybody. I'm here. You've got a friend. Yeah. Don't go chasing waterfalls. Stick to the waters and the lakes that you're used to. It's all there, always there. Pay attention. That's why write whatever you need to write. Underline whatever you need to underline. Get stuck with color pencils. I use 3 or 4 different colors after a while because there's so much stuff written in there. And I don't read a book once. And I don't read it all at once. I put on my music in the morning, grab a book. I'm reading. What am I reading? I'm reading. You probably guessed it by now. The Once in the Future Goddess by Eleanor Gallon. That's a classic. It's a big book.
I've got it. She's got mouse print in it. It's so tiny.
Yeah, it's tiny because there's so much information. And I'm reading it second time now. I've read it once, second time now. When I was reading, for instance, Anne Baring's book, Dream of the Cosmos, there's another Bible. It's a huge book.
And small print.
Small print. I need to read it again. I've read it now twice or 3 times. Can you see that it's underlined and so on? Things that are sort of meaningful to me. But these kind of books you can't read once. They're always going to be a reference book for you for the rest of your life because there's so much information. There's someone's whole life in it, really. Like and they're important. But every time you read, something new is going to pop up.
Well,
Okay, I think that's enough for today. What do you reckon?
well, maybe
Here.
after the new year, when more people have had a chance to finish the book, we can do this again.
Yeah. We'll do another one. When you have
Yeah.
Secrets of the Golden Cloud. That's Jung. Is it? Jung, yes. Secrets of the Golden Cloud. And
Well,
you know, some of these,
It's also Richard Wilhelm who wrote the I Ching,
yeah,
translated the I Ching.
some of these things that Jung wrote, the books that he published, some of these things came through him in a night or two of being in rapture. It just comes through him, and then he writes a book about it.
It's
That's
amazing.
that's why I like him in that sense that he did the work, and he was the mediator between the two dimensions.
Yes.
Spirit of the times and spirit
So
of
are
the
you,
times.
Merrick.
Yeah, I'm trying to be. Yes, of course.
No, you're not trying. You are being.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So you see, the book is, like I said, it's really in big part thanks to Catherine, because without Catherine, I'd still be thinking about writing, not actually finished. And then Pamela, because Pamela was kind enough to sweat tears and sweat,
Blood, sweat, and tears.
sweat and tears, and in
What am I
her
doing?
accent, swear at me so many times. I heard it, through the distance between Australia. I heard it swearing and the cursing and all the shit that she was saying. When will you fucking finally finish with all this? To put up with it. We go. It's done.
I even asked him how I got to be the chosen one to do this.
Because there wasn't really anyone else. Because I've said so many things that I've, in the previous lectures and that I've given, and the books that I've told you to read and so on. That I've given you an introduction of what you were going to be facing. So you had to know something about it. Without knowing anything about it, you couldn't have even edited it, because you would not make much sense to you.
Yeah.
So everything.
Well, it took me longer to edit it than it did for you to write it.
Yeah, because I know this stuff. I live this stuff. That's easy.
Well,
All right, you troublemakers. I'll see you next time. Take care.
Thank you, Mary.
okay. Well, happy Thanksgiving, ladies.
Yes, and to
Do
you.
you celebrate that?
You
I guess you
too.
don't.
Yeah,
Peter, you
Thanksgiving.
don't celebrate that.
No. There's a story about. Do you eat turkeys on Thanksgiving? Yeah,
That's
well, you
the
know.
tradition.
Yeah. You know that there was a council, the Turkeys Council, that voted that all the turkeys, the U.S. turkeys, are migrating to Australia because we don't have Thanksgiving. It's not for their Thanksgiving, so they have all decided that there's going to be visa issues soon, and they're all migrating to Australia.
I know that laugh, Amy. I know you're on.
I am. I like that idea.
Okay.
Turkeys have to migrate to Australia because for you it's Thanksgiving, but for the turkeys it's not much of a Thanksgiving at all. All right, so I'll see you next time. When I think maybe early next year,
Yes.
we'll do another one once you have managed to kind of work your way through it. Like I said, the book can't be read once. It's a book that you will keep coming back to, hopefully, and use it as an example for yourself and make the connections to your own dreams and experiences.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you. See
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Be good.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
I'll download it and send it. I'll probably send it to Laurie. I don't know. Any of you want a copy? I'll send it to you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'd like.
Definitely.
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks, Emma. See
All
ya.
right.
Thanks,
Bye.
Pam. Thank you, Merrick.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.